Well,
Good to see you, Jody.
hey, Gina, I've been looking forward to this, and let's just dive right in because, when you're really looking forward to something, it's sometimes best to just cut to the chase. And, I know since you've been in this space, shared this space and with some other candidates around LA, progressives who are trying to bring an alternative vision of politics to LA, to the Southland, that isn't settling for the same old kind of duopoly of Republicans and Democrats, and even within the Democratic Party that we have, the Democrats tend to govern Southern California, but still they often govern like centrists, like Republicans, and sometimes, people get on me for being upset at Democrats. I'm not upset at Democrats because I'm a Republican. I'm upset at Democrats because they are Republicans. They act like
That's
Republicans.
exactly right.
It's just real meaningful for me to get a chance to talk to you now and follow up the conversation you started here with those other progressives. You've been out now and doing it so well, representing so well, this alternative position, this, reimagining what we can do and be as a Southland community. And so I want to just give you a chance to share with us, decompress, share with me, and then, people are going to see this. So with those of us who care about these issues so passionately, and that's a growing number in these days, tell me a little bit about what it's been like since you were here last, what this journey has been like, as an activist entering electoral politics. A lot of times you have, politicians doing all the politics, which means that they're really willing to compromise and, say whatever they have to say to get to the point where they compromise and fundraise, et cetera. Activists are often standing outside, trying to make them accountable and make them reckon with their promises. But you are an activist now who's entering the fray, the political fray. This is something I don't see a lot, so tell me what that experience has been like for you.
The first thing I'll say is, I often say I'm not a politician, and 2.5 months later, I have to stop saying that because I'm a politician now. So that's been a really eye-opening acceptance about myself that I didn't know I would come to.
I love that a lot, Gina. Tell me what that means to you, though. When you were saying I don't want to be a politician, what was that definition or sense of a politician that you did not want to be, that now you recognize it is important to, kind of partake in?
I think because I equate politician with the status quo. I equate politician with Republican or Democrat. Truth be told, I haven't paid enough attention to outside candidates. I haven't paid enough attention to Peace and Freedom Party or Green Party or no party preference or independent candidates till now. And I'm so deeply disappointed with our two-party system. And I'm specifically disappointed in the Democrats, much like you opened with. So when I think politician, I think about Democrats, right? I think about Karen Bass, who was my congresswoman, who I thought was a good congresswoman, who I had high hopes for. And I didn't think she would defund the police. Okay, I'll be clear about that. But I thought she would say Black Lives Matter. And I thought she would make Black Lives Matter. And it's not about her. It's about the Democratic Party and what she's able to say. And when I see things like single payer not getting passed in California, when we have a and I say we, then the Democrats have a super majority up in Sacramento, and in a pandemic, we cannot get single payer passed in this state. And what's coming down next is a $97 billion surplus that they're going to reward car drivers with. So that's telling me who is calling the shots, and it's big oil, and it's big pharma and the insurance lobbies. That's who the Democrats have to speak for at the end of the day. And the watchdog of all of that is law enforcement. So
how do they reconcile, Gina, how do they reconcile the support for, the car drivers and, and getting the oil money. They say, that's politics. I'm taking these contributions from business interests and labor interests, blah, blah, blah. They'll give you all of that. But how do they reconcile all of that with their pro-environment position? I thought
they don't care. They don't care about the pro-environment. I mean, the bottom line is they let gas prices go up. They let oil companies price gouge to the extreme where folks are really hurting to fill their tanks with gas. So you're distracted by that fact and grateful that you're going to get a stimulus to continue to fill your gas tank. Instead of, thank goodness for Katie Porter, and there's another representative with her that's introduced a bill in Congress to stop this price gouging. But again, that's on a federal level. And how long will it be before we actually see the results of that here in this state? So what folks know is it costs them $120 to fill their tank right now. So if Gavin Newsom's going to send them a check for $800 to ease that blow, they're not making the connection about why that is. Who is actually benefiting from that stimulus, right? And we are not a climate conscious state even. I mean, Gavin Newsom has—
California,
yeah.
The West Coast, the left coast, not us, no?
Look at all the oil drilling. Look at all the new fracking. I mean, we have, and what we say is, well, 5 years from now we'll stop. 5 years from now we'll stop. Meanwhile, knowing that politicians will change over time. Will it ever stop? I mean, I really just don't think it will. And so when I say I'm not a politician, it's because I don't ever want to be in that fray. I don't ever want to be in that fray where I can't go in on day one and say, no more fossil fuel drilling in LA tomorrow. And I am in a unique position to actually say that. Right? I mean, everybody kind of grimaces and says, well, you're going to have lots of lawsuits, and you're fine, bring the lawsuits. That doesn't mean I can't hit the stop button, because I don't have anybody breathing down my neck telling me you absolutely cannot do this. And, so this is, I got into this because, quite honestly, I just didn't think law enforcement was ever going to stop killing Black and brown people in this city.
Yes. This is where I know you from in the past. The work that we've done as part of Black Lives Matter, going way back now.
Yeah.
And I love this, kind of see you keeping that issue front and center here. And when you bring up someone like Karen Bass, who was one of the leaders of that 2020 performative display where they put on the kente cloth and went down on one knee with Nancy Pelosi, et cetera. She was kind of promoting that, that kind of symbolic gesture of standing in solidarity with the marchers and what they were marching for. But then she's come out here and feeling that perhaps she has to say this. I don't think this is the truth. I don't think she really does have to say it, but apparently feeling like she has to play the law and order card to some extent to run with Rick Caruso and the gang. She is going to have to talk about actually, more police, increasing the police presence, and, taking a kind of punitive approach to houselessness. So,
but back up. She's still in federal government in 2020, and she does not support the Breathe Act put forward by the Black Lives Matter movement. She instead introduces a weaker version, the George Floyd and Policing Act bill, that ultimately doesn't pass. But it didn't end qualified immunity. It didn't do the things the Breathe Act wanted to do. And she caucuses, she has some kind of caucus with the Department of Homeland Security. So she has already these ties to law enforcement that trouble me, because here in this city, we need a major interruption to the law enforcement, right? And we're finally seeing white folks scratch their heads and say, yeah, there's a policing problem here, right?
Well, when we're looking at Gina, over $3 billion, there's a vote for an increase, $8 million a day, and crime is going up. They're saying crime is going up. Well, now we know that is homicides have gone up, but a lot of other crimes have gone down in the same time period. And it's not connected to policing. We can demonstrate that in a variety of ways. I can go in, I have lots of receipts. That's what I'm in the business of, right? I have to have receipts.
I did a whole tweet thread with charts and graphs about the last 20 years in crime and crime stats.
Yes.
And yes, there's a blip in it, And part of the reason for the blip is because in 2020, crime was so low, right? With the pandemic, when the pandemic first hit. So there is a spike in the 2021 year, and it does look significant. But when you're studying things, you look over a period of time, and crime is historically low. All crime, even property crime. So,
and Gina, it's always struck me as curious that if the argument is that police make us safer, more police make us more safe, then how do you explain this, what you just described, the spike in crime? At the same time, we have more invested in the police than ever. Normally, we would say that's a problem, right? There's a failure if we're spending more resources in this area and what it's supposed to be addressing is going up. Maybe that's not the way we should be spending those resources, but we don't.
That's exactly right. And they get to use that both ways, right? They get to say, well, crime's going up, so we need more cops, we need more money. And they get to use it in the reverse too, because, you know, no matter what, they get people to believe that for some reason adding more cops keep us safe. If that were true, we would be the safest city in the whole world. With the, you know, we have 50 law enforcement agencies in Los Angeles, right? Folks don't even realize that everybody's got their own law enforcement agency. The VA has its own law enforcement agency, right? Every school has its own. I mean, UCLA has its own law enforcement agency. Santa Monica City College has its own law enforcement agency. I mean, everywhere you turn, there's another layer of law enforcement in the city. And yet they're, you know, what I'm trying to equate with people is it's this feeling of safety. People don't feel safe. And the reason people don't feel safe is because there's so many people living in the city who don't have their needs met.
Yes.
So none of us can feel safe when we're living in a city where we can see on a daily basis how many people don't have their needs met. And I'm not just talking about the unhoused, although that obviously is the first place to point because it's visible, but just the tons and tons of folks who are so rent burdened and waiting for that eviction notice and living on the edge of life, right? Or the folks who have been priced out entirely. So they're commuting 2.5 hours, 2 hours in to work in our city. They're frazzled. They're not in good shape. A 5-hour commute a day? Like, that's not healthy. That's not a healthy way to live. And so when people tell me they don't feel safe, that is why. It's not because people are out robbing and killing. And I mean, that, I'm not saying that that's not happening in some communities, and it definitely is. And I'm so grateful to folks who are on the ground doing violence, intervention work. And we definitely need more of that. But what we definitely need are resourced, healthy communities, because that's what promotes safety. You know, when everyone among us has their basic needs met, people feel safe. People can thrive. People can move about the city again and wave at one another again and let each other into a lane in traffic and things that, you know, I agree, I don't see here anymore. You know, when I just saw Rick Caruso went down to Venice Beach and did a whole show, much like Villanueva, right? And over the summer, did a whole show about like, how dare we let our beaches and everything look like this. And I just think, you know, it's because you have just, that area has been so horribly gentrified. Even if they removed every last person living on the street in Venice, I don't think anybody feels good in Venice anymore. How can you? How can you? It's like we've sucked the soul out of this city. Like, that's what we need to return. We need to return our soul, our humanity.
How would we grade, Gina? Let's concretely apply that way of thinking and approaching the issues to the problem of houselessness that you gestured at earlier on. And one of the standard ways we responded to that is through law enforcement, you know, cracking down on sanitation. Sanitation and law enforcement cracking down on down and out, like we did in 2006, 7, 8 with the Safer Cities Initiative. 2009, 10, squandered hundreds of millions of dollars, 50 at least new police officers. Pete White says it was more like 110, just patrolling the nickel.
Just in Skid Row.
Just patrolling the nickel, yes, just there. And yet that solution to the problem of homelessness, houselessness, didn't actually pan out, did it? And we
No.
look at how much the
Gotten
problem
worse.
got worse.
It's gotten worse. The
After all that.
city's response to houselessness has been sanitation and police. It has not, we have not put forth a housing first approach. And folks are finally starting to connect with that. Folks are finally starting to say, you know, we need a housing first approach. That's panicking everyone. Everyone's like, no, 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 services, let's work. Because the secret is there's so much money to be made from people living on the streets. Like, this is what I knew about how there was no political will to fix this. I knew from a street level before I got into this race. Okay. I knew because I was doing sweep defense every week. You know, I was, you know, doing mutual aid, and I could see, and I was calling city council, board of supervisors, even LAUSD board member, right? Come on, let's use this school site that's empty. Let's do this. No political will to fix it. But now that I'm running, I've learned it's a policy choice, right? The nonprofit industrial complex, wealth twice stolen. Like, there are nonprofits getting rich hand over fist, being handed these contracts to do nothing significant to, you know, improve our situation. They can tout these numbers of, well, we housed 180 people, or we housed, you know, this many people. There's 60,000 people living on the streets. And, you know, US housing policy is deeply baked in racism. US 20th century US housing policy was written specifically for the creation of white wealth while extracting wealth from Black people in particular and people of color in general. And until we decide that that policy has to go and we no longer adhere to it, we'll never make a difference with this. We will spin our wheels. We have to decide housing is a human right. And I will say, as the day is long, that the biggest win I've had on this campaign trail so far is Friday night at KCRW. Both Karen Bass and Kevin De Leon said housing is a human right. So it is time for everyone to hold those already elected government representatives to that truth, because US housing policy is not written that way.
No, we don't think of people having rights to having roofs over their head. We look at the misery, and you're right, you can't avoid the racial dimension. You walk through Skid Row and you see it's 75% Black, you know, and it hits you in the face. It hit me looking at all of those Black folk in dire distress, the direst distress that we know in our nation. You know, the two places in our nation that have the highest, greatest concentration of misery would be probably Skid Row and these jail cells. And both places are disproportionately Black, right?
Full with
People
Black
by
people.
Black bodies,
That's exactly right. It's atrocity.
What really it's hit me when I think about Skid Row, though, Gina, is, and connecting to this racial point that you bring up, and racial empathy, sympathy, you know, and whether we are about racial justice, is I keep going back to the 9th Ward after Hurricane Katrina, and those Black folks standing on those rooftops with water literally up to their necks, and helicopters taking pictures of them. One day goes by, 2 days go by, no FEMA. 3 days go by, no FEMA. 4 days go by, water up to their necks. And here comes Sean Penn handing out water because FEMA still couldn't get its act together 4 days. Those Black bodies in distress did not induce us as a nation, did not get us to respond to them with sympathy, empathy, care, and concern in the same way we did after those planes ran into those buildings in 9/11. After 9/11,
the
there was a
hurricane in New York.
Yeah, a hurricane,
Andy,
right? There's a panic of empathy for the victims, right? That you don't have when you have Black bodies. And what you have down here in Skid Row, it streams to me, is Hurricane Katrina, the 9th Ward, writ large, only now it's not 4 days or 4 weeks or 4 months, it's year after year after year, right? Disproportionately Black bodies, again, in the direst of need, and clear families, you know, we go down, you spend time down there, you know.
Yeah, I'm down there a lot.
Families, you know, and we see the distress there, and the water's up to here, and we're not doing anything. We see it right up to here. And I think it's that same night. So for you to put your finger on that is important. Now, how do we encourage people to feel that and act on it? Because you've been part of a movement, Black Lives Matter, you know, white folks for Black lives, white people for Black lives, and activists in all kinds of ways. You've been a really central part of this struggle that we've been engaging in, that's having us reckon as a nation and as a community and as a city with the racial injustice here. And you've had success. Y'all have had success. BLM and then their allies like y'all helping them have moved mountains. You got George Gascon to come in here over Jackie Lacey, playing the Black and woman card hard, and trying to keep us in an old conception of justice that was retrograde. You got Measure J, which was a defund the police. 10% of the LA County budget, that's up to $1 billion a year, going to non-incarceration alternatives. Right. You had fabulous successes, right, in spite of all of these headwinds. How you were able to get that empathy? You were able to get people to connect. How do we get them to connect now?
LA is leading the way towards abolition, and it has been for the last 2 years. And you just named the path on it. So we need to stay on it. It's the whole reason I got into this race, because what I saw on that stage was not going to move our movement forward. And the reason for that is law enforcement. When the pandemic hit, I work in trade shows. So my work went away completely. I didn't have a trade show for 17 months. It gave me this unique opportunity to do a deep dive into what's going on here, because I saw, complete failure at all levels of government to address this pandemic situation. Jody, as I sit here before you, the two people that run this town are the sheriff and the chief of police. The chief of police even runs the LA Times. The sheriff's at war with him. I even started to think, my goodness, do they take turns being the more sinister entity to take heat off the other? Because as I'm campaigning, people will say to me, oh, the LAPD is not as bad as the sheriff's department, Gina. I'm like, it absolutely is. Actually, it leads the country in police killings.
Yes.
So, but because there's so much
Tell them to Google Rampart.
Right.
Oh my God.
But there's so much heat on the sheriff's department right now that I mean, I've said this out loud to a few people. I'm like, do you think that's by design, like to distract people from one entity being worse than the other? But, it's white supremacy is codified into our legal system, again, to build white wealth with law enforcement as the enforcer. And I'm sorry, but the status quo, including the Democratic Party, is beholden to keeping that system going. And that is why I jumped into this race, because even though I liked Karen Bass as my congressperson, I could see that she was already touting the Democratic line. I could see that she was already, anybody who even wants to keep the LAPD the same size is not paying attention. Stop LAPD Spying has had to sue the city of LA many times to get the budget, the full budget of the LAPD, and they have not been able to get it. So even if you don't talk about firing every last police officer, which of course is my dream come true, but even if you just get the bloat out of the budget, I mean, Kenneth Mejia is starting to dip into it when he can here and there, but I would argue that there's $1 billion of waste in that $3.2 billion budget, right? So even without firing everybody, even without, I mean, I won't be hiring new cops for sure, even with cops retiring, there's money to be taken from that police budget. And it's so nefarious that we can't even see it to know where it exists to take it from. And
$8 million a day, Gina,
right.
that's right. $8.2 million every single day.
Right.
That's going to the LAPD and not to houselessness and not to education and not to anything else.
Youth development doesn't even register. It's the second, it gets the second least amount of money on this budget that was just presented. Yet we keep hearing all this rhetoric about young people doing smash and grabs. Well, what's the way to combat that? Youth development, right? Yep. Keep youth engaged, give them other things to do. We clearly don't value that. That's not what we value. And,
no, we decided at some point, Gina, and you keep putting your finger on this, that we were going to approach poverty governance through law enforcement, not through social support programs, not through what helped me to succeed, which was a Great Society program called A Better Chance that takes kids out of inner city areas and puts them in boarding schools. It's a creature of the Great Society, 60s kind of. And it was when the idea was government intervention has to be on a serious scale, massive to make a difference. But if you can do that, because when they took me and put me in that boarding school, that was a lot of money a year. I'm away now. They, all
less
kinds
than
of
jail.
Yeah, but they paid. They were willing. They were willing to make that kind of commitment. Now they put that money, rather than going into programs like I'm a product of, they go into police budgets.
Yes.
That same money.
They even have police, right? They have police magnets now in the LAUSD schools, right? So it's incredible how insidious it is. And
it's propaganda. It's all immersing, right? It's a kind of propaganda that we have been subject to for a good 40 years now. You can't turn on the TV without Law and Order, Dick Wolf. The procedurals or our imagination seem to be limited by the idea of cop procedurals that are everywhere all the time. And there's a lot of that kind of constant drumming of we need police for safety, rather than viewing safety as something that comes from not just deterrence, but prevention. Cops are supposed to deter crime by the threat of arrest. But another way is to prevent crime by taking away any conditions that make you want to cross the line in the first place. If I'm hungry,
right.
Gina, when I was hungry, before I got in that a Better Chance program, when I was hungry, I did things that crossed the line to get something in my belly. Right.
You're hungry.
That's just the way it was.
Food should be that's a basic need. Food. When I was reading to my then 2-year-old, now 16-year-old, and something in the story about going to buy groceries. And I closed the book and she looked at me and said, food should be free. And I was like, wow, that's really profound. Like it just really came from a very natural place of her. She was really mystified that we had to go and buy food. And
yes,
I mean, when you look at food justice, I'll go on a tangent here because this is like, I've been following Melissa at Polo's Pantry for a while. She homie made meals and unbelievable. She started going out with the farm workers on the weekends during pandemic. She does like Saturday in Coachella and Sunday in Oxnard. And she discovered that the farm workers, like they can't even afford the produce that they pick, right? The produce that they pick for us. But it comes back to them in these food bank boxes. Nicely. Have you seen those food bank boxes?
No.
They're a little too tidy. It's like that is a whole nother thing that's happening. These food bank boxes, they're way too tidy. They just are. When you do a government food giveaway, like a board of supervisors will do them sometimes, I'll go and pick them up and deliver them to my houseless neighbors. But that's an industrial like packed box, perfectly taped. The boxes are made for it with the food bank emblem on them. And like it's just all wealth. It's all extracted wealth. It's all wage theft. It's all, and it's all connected. We keep people on the brink of poverty and dependent on these charitable programs when in a sense it's because they've had their own labor stolen from them. They've had their own wealth stolen from them. And then being given back to them through this idea of charity or philanthropy. Like we need to move beyond that. That's why, one of the things people give me a lot of heat for is I've got a $39 minimum wage plan. $39 minimum dollar, and it's really interesting. There's a couple pushbacks I give, which is Steve Soberoff, my nemesis, said in police commission that the LAPD isn't paid enough to live in the city of Los Angeles, and they make $50, $60 an hour. So by his own admission, $50 an hour isn't enough to live in the city of Los Angeles, which suddenly makes $39 not sound like a lot.
Right.
And let's face it, we know Jeff Bezos, we know Amazon can pay $39 an hour. We know Walmart can pay $39 an hour. They're choosing not to. This corporate greed is come down to wage theft. And, will we have to subsidy small businesses to do it? Absolutely. Right. It's a different form of universal basic income. Will we say to small businesses, let's do this third. And then, what I love to say, especially to reporters who think they're giving me a big gotcha with the $39, I say, what do you make per hour? And they pause.
Yeah.
I'm like, yeah, because $39 is like the bare minimum to live halfway decent in Los Angeles. I mean, those are based on state of California wages to have a 2-bedroom apartment for 2021. Hasn't even been updated for 2022 yet. So, wages have to come up, housing prices have to come down, right? There's things we have to do that we can control when 75% of our rental stock is now corporate and big landlord owned. When I say that out loud and I hear that, I'm not thinking about the 25% that's not. But Karen Bass pushed back on me the other night. She's like, what about all the mom and pops? And I'm like, did you not hear what I just said? That's not the majority of them. And there is COVID rental relief. I'd love to dig into how many mom and pop landlords said no to that first round of COVID rental relief because they wanted to evict and re-rent to folks at a higher rate. But and again, all of those can be supported. There's so much money. We have an $11 billion budget. There's it for our city of Los Angeles. LAUSD has a $9 billion budget. Why are teachers not making, $100,000 a year and only teaching 15 kids in a class? Can you imagine how quickly our city would start thriving? I mean, just that, pay teachers $100,000 a year and give them 15 kids in a class.
Well, that's connected to your earlier point, though, about, isn't it, Gina, police budgets? Though that money's going to those police officers now. Some of them are making $300,000 a year. I've seen some of these overtime.
At the top?
Some of the overtime stuff that they've been racking up and other things going on. So it really always comes back to your initial point that I think is so powerful. And people will sometimes try to say, well, aren't you people being kind of one issue, activists or advocates or politicians? You can't just be one issue. It can't all just be about the police. The police is not just about the police. No, the police is about the whole budget.
Stolen. What I said before was like, it's one solution. It's not one issue. It's one solution. Yes. Take the money out of that bucket and give it to all of the other issues that there are, because there are a lot of issues, but there is one solution that's hoarding it all. So
one of the things I found intriguing that you said, a number of things that I found intriguing, Gina, but a couple I'll pick out are one is that we not think about charity, just we're doing charitable work for helping people who are suffering, serious disadvantage and, poverty, et cetera. Not to see them as mere cases to be pitied, as too many people do, but rather as symptoms of injustice. What we're looking at are people who have a claim to justice. They're being unjustly treated. John Rawls, of all people, the classic liberal political philosopher, John Rawls, of all people, theory of justice, who said, justice is a virtue of institutions. You don't talk about individual justice. Institutions have to be set up in a just way. He said, certain levels of inequality, once you get to certain high levels of inequality, what you have is violence. He actually called it that. That's violence. He's called that structural violence. Right. And so let's really confront what these people are. These folks are victims of structural violence that we're all responsible for. We're all complicit in. Right. And so now, how do we address these as in that way, in that spirit, not, as people that we're trying to, treat justly, that's not in a fundamental sense. And treating them justly may mean things like a universal basic income. Right. What's wrong with, I think they're trying in some cities now. They're doing
we have a pilot in LA. We have a pilot in LA. They're about to produce the findings. I'm very excited because we're going to find that it was very successful. Yes. Like we already know that before we see it.
Where it's been tried elsewhere, it's been successful.
And we need reparations. We need land back. This country has not reckoned. It has not reckoned for its dark, dark, dark beginnings. And every day we see the results of that. You know, when you look at the decline of the Black population living inside the city of Los Angeles, I am aghast that that is not everybody's emergency on day one, because in the year 2000, there were just under 1 million Black people living in the city of Los Angeles. As of the 2020 census, there are less than 400,000 in 20 years. And, you know, it's easy for me to connect the dots because I've been very close to it from a policing end of things, right? It's very easy for me to see that how can you, as a Black family, see 4 officers not get convicted for what they did to Rodney King and think your family's safe here? Because you cannot. I mean, I have friends who are like, they're in terror when their children leave the house. They're like, they know, they're like, you know, waiting with bated breath, watching the Find My iPhone, like, you know. And I mean, I don't have to tell you, you know, and then you add environmental.
Here's why I know. Let me tell you specifically why I know, even very recently, Gina, I'm just driving from View Park, where we are now, to USC. You know, that's MLK or Exposition. Going up both of those, going up MLK, I wrote an op-ed in the LA Times in 2004 about being profiled there. And then a couple years ago, I'm going up Exposition to my torts class, and you know, I'm pulled over. They only see me from behind. All they see is the fro. They don't see the front part. And the next thing I know, there's a helicopter that they call in. They assume I'm a flight risk because if I'm in a fro in that kind of car in this neighborhood, I must have stolen it. And, you know, so this is a daily, you know, and I have, you know, all of the pedigree that you're supposed to get that's supposed to protect you from, you know, the black tax, but it doesn't protect you from the black tax. That's what the View Park folk and Baldwin Hill folk learned, that there's no difference between them and any other folk anywhere in the city. Once you get out of these hills and into, you know, the rest of the city, Stevie Wonder said it best, you know, you might make big cash, but you cannot cash in your face. And the face of, you know, crime for police is black. And so you're going to get treated with that presumption over and over. And so, yes, my 3 sons, I always think about it. It is something that's a constant thought, but even when you're as old as I am, right, you think you can age out of some of that. No, you don't.
No. And, you know, we were outside the mayor's mansion. I think it was June 2nd, you know, the really big Black Lives Matter protest we had there. And Herb Wesson pulled up, and I had never spoken to Herb Wesson before, but I was with Baba Akili. So I think I was with Patrice maybe, and he came over to say something. And I said, "Oh, you're Herb Wesson." He said, "How you recognize me in a mask?" I said, "Because you're Herb Wesson." And he looked at me and he said, "I really hope that this will change so my grandkids don't have to live with the same shit I've had to live with." And I was like, I can't believe I'm finally meeting Herb Wesson, and this is the first thing he said to me. But I felt it. And even like Marquise Harris Dawson, I heard him say at City Council when People's Budget gave that beautiful presentation, you know, that was just lip service from the City Council about it. But it was I thought I was watching the civil rights presentation of my lifetime, for sure. And even Marquise said, you know, I get pulled over. I have to deal. I hear the mayor of Compton say, I've been pulled over. I've been profiled. Nobody, you know, this is tyranny. Like it's
but Gina, here's what I say. Here's what I say to those Black politicians who say that. Good. I want to hear you say that. But once you say that, now act like you know.
Do something about it.
You know. Yeah, do something about it. Don't tell me just that you know. Act like you know.
And then vote for the increase to the police budget. The police budget went up 8% this year, okay? And their police killings went up 150% last year. They got rewarded for killing more people last year. The only line item in the whole budget that's gone up has been the LAPD's, 52% in the last 10 years.
Well, that's because so many politicians are cowardly, as you pointed out, when it comes to the police, our law enforcement, and really don't want to curry favor with them and be viewed as friends of law enforcement, you know, and we see that over and over. And like you said, it means at the end of the day that the tail is wagging the dog, that the police department winds up calling the shots for the city.
That's right. That's right. And you know, it's such a strange time, but when you watch what's going on with the LAPD now, all of the officers, the highest ranking officers, are getting these huge pay raises because they're all getting ready to retire. Because I'm telling you, the lid is off. The lid's off and it's not coming back on. When you've got the head of losses stepping down and crying racism, saying we can't house anybody because of racist housing policies, right? It's the lid is all the way off. So, but they're gonna take every last dime they can before they go. And to watch our city council in 2022 vote 14-1 to accept that cookie cutter, same old budget. I mean, somebody should have just put a magnifying glass over the youth development number and said, you know, sadly, I didn't have time to give public comment, but lots of our comrades did, thankfully. But how can you justify this? How can you be running stories day after day about youth, right? One of the debate questions at the Cal State LA debate where Dr. Molina was so horribly mistreated and everyone sat in silence except for Tabitha, nobody said a word. One of the debate questions was, what are you going to do to make teenagers respect authority more?
Whoa.
Yeah, in 2022. In 2022. And if you really truly meant that that was an issue, then youth development should have $1 billion budget.
Yeah.
Teachers should be paid $100,000 a year and only have 15 kids in a class, if that's truly what we're worried about. But I think, you know, so much of it is just this constant wheel, and the fact that California has this enormous prison industrial complex that needs to be fed. And there are way too many towns, cities, counties that absolutely rely on that. Like that is their infrastructure, that is their income. And we have been very successful at decarceration, as you pointed out, right? Measure R, Measure J, the alternatives to incarceration, the Care First budget, you know, Justice LA and other orgs have been just genius at getting people. I mean, I was out deep canvassing today, talking to white people about how jails do nothing except make society worse. And so folks know that now. And the plan is to fill it with houseless folks. That is the plan. That's why Newsom is doing this whole mental health mandate, right? Where is he going to put those folks that he's mandating for mental health?
Gina, in Tennessee, I just saw they passed legislation to make it a felony, up to 6 years now, felony.
Yes, to be outside, to camp outside, It's the war on the poor is nationwide. In fact, in one of my debates earlier this week at UCLA, I was with the lesser known candidates, but that's worth looking at that discussion. Like I was like, this was so invigorating, hearing new things from Mel Wilson, Craig Grivey, and Alex Grundenville. Yep. But Craig at the end was saying, yeah, Gina's abolition pie in the sky sounds great, but you know, that we have to go slow and we're not at war. And I was like, I beg to differ. We are at war. There's a war on the poor here, alive and well and raging. And if somebody doesn't make big sweeping changes, you know, that's a war we're not going to win.
Well, let me wrap this then with a question about that, Gina, because, you know, we are those of us who are advocating for change, and you are really the foremost representative of that advocacy in this mayoral campaign, for sure, are up against it, right? We're up against a juggernaut, a bloated punishment bureaucracy that, you know, just the LAPD alone, I think I saw had $5 million plus a year committed to public relations alone. Now, these people just, you know, just
47 people.
Yeah,
47
yeah.
people. If you need 47, I mean, I don't even have a PR person and I'm running for mayor. I mean, and if you've got 47, I can't remember, it's a share. One of them has 47 and the other has 65. Okay?
Yes, it's ridiculous.
If you need that many spin doctors, it's not about public safety.
Yes.
It's not about public safety.
But that's what we're up against. So that's what I'm asking you, Gina. So it's kind of a wrap-up way, knowing that's what we're up against, and that's what we've always been up against. But you have been part of a movement that has been able to take on that juggernaut successfully, right? And bring and help to bring in some of these changes that I didn't think was possible, frankly, 10 years ago. I just didn't see Measure J. I just didn't see a Gascon kind of, I just didn't see, you know, a lot of the things. So, you know, so you've been, you know, you don't have to just theorize about it. It's not just hypothetical. You've actually been part of a successful movement that has taken on the status quo and succeeded. So how do you see going forward from here, again, being successful in this new role that you're undertaking, you know, in your new political role, building the political momentum now, so we can continue to cash in, you know, like we did 2 years ago in November when Measure J and Gascon and all the other changes happened at the ballot box. You know, can we have another ballot box kind of revolution? How do we keep that revolutionary spirit going? How will you do it anyway?
That's right. We're just getting started. Okay, we're just getting started. And what gives me mad hope are all the progressives running. And not just for city council, but let's face it, there are 4 or 5 straight up, no nonsense abolitionists running, right? For city council, city controller, city attorney. He's not an abolitionist, but he cannot wait to hold the LAPD accountable. Like, I haven't heard those kinds of words. A handful of folks running for city council seats, but you've got folks running for Congress. Super progressive folks running for Congress. Daniel Lee is running for Karen Bass's seat. Shervin Azami in the Valley. David Kim running downtown. David Kim has to get in. Like, this is the second time he's running. He almost unseated Jimmy Gomez last time. So I'm expecting a win from him. Pilar Shivo out in the Valley. Like, California is going, actually not just Los Angeles is going to lead us back into the light. Like, there is such an appetite for this. This isn't about just a small group of people who sat in a room and did Measure J. I mean, the progression of how that happened, you know, Measure R was Patrice, right? Reform LA jails, Patrice. We have got to get an alternatives to incarceration off the ground. And what she started building were folks who were like, okay, we're going to have to put dollars and cents to this. Like, let's figure this out. And like, so J was bubbling before R was even like, you know, R, we won by 73% of LA County voted for alternatives to incarceration and oversight of the sheriff. That is where public appetite is. It's hard to know it, because the propaganda machine is so strong. It's so strong. The LA Times prints everything Chief Moore tells them to. So, you know, LA Magazine, that rag needs to go. Like, I can't even imagine the amount of damage that they have done to our movement, right? This backlash, but I fully believe that that's the minority now. They're in the minority now. I think the silent majority, that old adage of the silent majority, is with us now. Like, we're done investing in these policies that don't work and leave us all very unhealthy, very vulnerable, very unsatisfied as a people, right? We need liquor, we need weed, we need credit cards, we need 600 channels on TV. I mean, like, it's just, you know, go outside and play some basketball with your neighbors. Like, that's what's good, right? And I was deep in the Valley today doing deep canvassing. So that's talking to white people specifically about racism. It's fascinating. But I was astounded at these big, beautiful streets I was on in the middle of a Sunday, beautiful, and not a soul on them. I was like, why are there not kids up and down these streets on their bikes, playing basketball, right? I mean, that's something the inner city has way over the suburbs. So what I'm telling you is, like, there's no joy out there anymore. There's no joy in hiding behind your fence with your Ring doorbell. Like, people are unhappy because they're not connected anymore. We've lost our connection to one another, and you can see it and you can feel it.
I'm certainly feeling this conversation, Gina, and your spirit is infectious, and I need a little bit of lifting of the spirits, because the news seems to be so full of the blues so often. But, you know, actually, I do feel inspired having talked.
Good.
You know,
Caruso is not getting in on day one. He's not getting 50%. Even Karen said it on Friday night. Caruso's not getting 50%. I think it's going to be me and Karen in a runoff. I think the three of us will be pretty close. I'm getting ready to put out some information that, like, straight up, a vote for Caruso is a vote for white supremacy. So I'm
Right.
going to go all the way.
Right.
She can't, and I get that. So I'm hopeful there. And I'm telling you, like, I see a bunch of progressives winning. I truly, truly do. And even if they don't win this cycle, although I desperately need them to too, like you, I need some wins.
Yeah.
It's happening. It's happening. The Intercept did an article back in August of 2019, and I need to write to them because I want to find it. And it was titled and this was on a day I was like, we're never going to get rid of jails. We're never going to get rid of police. I was so down. I was so like, it was heavy. And this is when we were just starting Measure R.
I know that feeling.
And the Intercept ran an article that said, is Los Angeles leading the way towards abolition? And I was like, yes. I mean, it put a new spring in my step. And a lot of people at White People for Black Lives were like, shh, don't use that word. Don't use that word. We'll never raise any money for Measure R. And I was like, we need to use that word. Let's own that word. Come on, So it's been interesting watching even my comrades there, like all of us one by one, like blink, abolitionist, blink, abolitionist, blink, because that's really how it's gone. I mean, even when I said to my husband, I don't remember, was it 2017? I was like, we don't need police officers at all. And he was like, come on, babe, at all? I'm like, yes, at all. We don't. Healthy communities don't need cops. And now you should see him. He's so hard on any police officers.
Well, you're so right too, Gina, that we are at the vanguard right here in LA of criminal justice reform. When I used to teach torts, going back to teaching it now, many of the bellwether cases came out of California. California has always been at the front of the nation, and LA now is at the front of California and the nation when it comes to criminal justice reform, for sure, given even more importance and urgency to what you're doing and what this election is all about. But yeah, I'm just going to close it off there because I want to ride this wave of inspiration now that I've gotten from you.
Do you want to endorse us?
Oh, that's easy, of course. You are the real alternative to the duopoly. And the way this is the future, the wave of the future. So that's easy as inhaling and exhaling for me. Absolutely.
Thank you.
And thank you for this undertaking. I know there's a lot of time and energy, and you have to take a lot of slings and arrows. People try to get under your skin. One thing you need most of all in politics is a thick hide.
Yes.
Man, you need a hide. So
I gotta tell you, I was really ready for like a lot of vitriol, and we've had it, but not to the degree I thought we would.
Nice.
I mean, every now and again I wake up to like the most hideous email about like, with all kinds of terrible things that they say, but it's not the way I thought it was going to be. Yeah. And what I hear more of from different, like, people are emailing me like, where I work, nobody's taken care of. Like, we all work, 10 hours a day and nobody gets a break. I mean, these are the emails I'm getting. Like, it's resonating with people that like somebody's paying attention. Yes. To what the conditions are like for people here. I had a construction worker. He builds mansions in Beverly Hills. He's a foreman. And he's like, I need to talk to you about my guys. Like, they're so afraid to do anything because they're afraid they'll be deported. So they work for like nothing. And I mean, just like, these are the stories I'm getting. And that's why I think the appetite for this and for real change, if I can say in front of the KCRW and LA Times, like, I'm just going to put people in those empty houses. And they were like, well, what do you mean? Like, you can't do that. And I'm like, oh, we did it. We did it in El Sereno, and I'll do it again. Like, if I can do it as an activist, why can't I do it as mayor?
Yes.
And Kevin De Leon's like, because there's rats in those houses. And I'm like, I didn't think to say this then, but I'm like, if you bought a fixer-upper, you'd be living in it.
Yeah.
While you were fixing it up.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. Yep. That's it. No, that's, I've been hoping that COVID would make us feel our interconnectedness more.
Yes.
And recognize that my health is dependent on your health.
Yes.
It really is. I can't
Yes.
remain healthy
Yes.
if you're not healthy. So it's enlightened self-interest. It doesn't even have to be about love for your fellow man. I like that too. But just enlightened self-interest should drive home to us that we all are interconnected and need to look out for the least among us. And you're the candidate out here right now saying, we're not going to leave anyone behind. You're the only one who's making that a central part of your whole message and your campaign. And that's beautiful to hear. It's an important part of the beautiful struggle. So thank you for doing that and being there in this run and in this race, Gina.
Thank you, Jody. I need these little boosts in the last 2 weeks. I'm like, what boost can I have? Your endorsement's a huge boost. Thank you.
No, that anytime that could have come anytime. Now's a good time. You ask, as long as I'm not viewed as a liability, but as an asset. I want to serve. I want to serve. There are certain circles in which what I say is a little too frank and and too forthright. But I'm glad that that's not the way you feel, and I hope
that's where we need to be. This civil discourse is a tool of the oppressor, and if that's what you're demanding, then you're still on the side of the oppressor. This whole outrage at folks shouting in debate space to me was really telling and disqualifying, frankly, of those candidates, that they ran off stage and ran away from people yelling. And city council has made themselves so inaccessible during this pandemic. Like folks are forced to go and yell to be heard. And it's the civil discourse thing is over. That's why, in the beginning of my race, people were like, maybe you shouldn't say defund the police. And I'm like, look, if I'm not going to say it running, I'm not going to do it when I get there. I'm not now. Honestly, it's like a joke. I start everything with well, I'm your famous defund the police candidate, and people are like,
it's funny, but it's serious,
right? I'm like, because I'm gonna do it, and then I'm gonna refund the people with it. So it's not,
and
not putting it in my purse and driving away. Yeah.
Yes, and science is on your side, evidence is on your side. That's the thing about this debate. When you look at the evidence, it's going one way, and it's the fact-free fear-mongering that's going the other way.
Right.
But evidence and rationality is on your side. The LAPD, for example, resisted doing the basic minimum things they should be doing to keep their community safe by making sure they got vaccinated.
Right.
They've resisted vaccination forever and then became vectors that took that out into the communities that they
Jody, they just went to DC and commemorated all the cops on the plaque. They all died of COVID. Okay, 8 police officers and 3 spouses died of COVID. Nothing has killed that many LAPD since I think the beginning of LAPD, including the Wild West. So Michael Moore went to DC and commemorated. And so he's doing this whole presentation and police commission about it. Never says they died of COVID, says they died in the line of duty.
Yes, in the line of duty. Yes, and I saw.
And we stopped contact tracing because it all went back to law enforcement.
Oh yes,
we stopped the contact tracing.
Of the whatever number it was, I just had a graphic. I don't have it in front of me of officers who died in the line of duty. That's what they said. I think it's Senator Klobuchar tweeted this out in the last day or two that we need to have a police, recognition week or whatever day. Or month, whatever it was she was saying, and for officers who died in the line of duty. And in this graphic, you see that the vast majority of those officers, 444 of them, died from COVID.
Yes,
so in other
it
words,
was the leading cause of
vaccinated.
Death. Yes, it was the leading. Even if you look back at the pictures of the beginning of the uprising, I'm shocked I didn't get COVID. I was up against these officers day in and day out, no masks, spitting in my face, no masks. I even, there's a famous picture of Chief Moore outside the mayor's mansion, and he's got no mask. He's got no mask on. This is we're knee deep in COVID at this point. I think we're on major lockdown.
Well, this is the thing that we've learned about the police department, LAPD and others, is that most of them really are right-leaning, far right-leaning. Many of them are white supremacists. FBI has talked about that. how many police departments are infiltrated by those. Even before we get to the LA Sheriff's Department gang problem,
Yep.
you have the white supremacist problem. And many of them are anti-science. You know, they'll come in, they're like the response to COVID, when the community's health and safety is really at stake. You tell us, you sell us on your ability to promote our safety. That's what you say your brand is as the police department. You're about protecting the safety of the community, and yet you're not getting vaccinated and bringing a deadly pandemic into the community and causing more deaths that way, actually, than you know, any of the deaths that are happening even out on the highways and byways. So
I'm embarrassed at how much of my public comment time I've wasted with that. But every time I would, because he starts every meeting now with like this long COVID report, 10 minutes of COVID. So I write down all the numbers while I'm listening to it. And I'm just like, get COVID out your mouth. Like, you don't care about COVID. You're not taking COVID seriously. None of your officers ever will. They're dying hand over fist. Who knows how many people in the community they've infected? Like, it's unreal. It's unreal. That alone, I mean, People's City Council did a tweet thread on like all of Michael Moore's like atrocities. It was like 25 tweets long, like in like 2 years. I'm like, how is this man still in charge?
Yeah. The chestnut I'll never forget, and I'll take to my grave, is that the people who were protesting the death of the murder by Derek Chauvin of Floyd caused Floyd's death.
Oh yes, that they were no better than the officers who, right. The people out protesting were no better than the officers. Or were just as responsible.
Yes, just as responsible for his death. That's how he said it.
That's what he said.
We're responsible for his death. So how did they do that on the timeline?
I was like, oh, he's fired for sure. I was like, he is fired for sure. There is no way we're getting him. He's back on Tuesday morning, giving the report. I'm like,
you know, because, and it's something else you said, Gina, because it's systemic. It's not, it's even beyond him. You know, even once we got rid of Charlie Beck, here comes Moore. When you get rid of Moore, it's going to be somebody more. Moore's right.
I know.
Remember when we got rid of Bill O'Reilly?
Yeah.
Remember when Bill O'Reilly was saying all that crazy?
Oh, now we got Tucker Carlson.
That's who we replaced Bill O'Reilly with. Tucker Carlson.
Worse.
So that going after personalities, you know, that's part of them. Sometimes you got to do that because they become symbols.
Yeah.
And they got to go for their symbolic value.
Right.
But there's also the structural systemic analysis that you've been bringing home consistently.
I'm trying, and I'm pretty impressed with how much of a platform I'm finally being given to say it.
Great.
It's
so
incredible.
keep on keeping on, Gina. I'm gonna be here supporting you every step of the way.